All right, welcome back to Chasing Rings, everyone. G, big dude, always good to see you guys. What's going on a
What's
wonderful
happening?
Wednesday?
What's happening, man?
Everything. So something I want y'all to check out. So of course, this is the 60th Super Bowl, right? You would
Right.
think with all the great defenses that we've had, that there would have been a shutout in the Super Bowl, but there has never been a shutout in the Super Bowl. The closest we've been is I think it was Super Bowl 6 with Miami and Dallas. Dallas held Miami to 2 points, and Super Bowl 53, New England beat the Rams 13-3. So who
Dang.
would have known that there was never a shutout in the Super Bowl?
Never heard that.
What you got,
Wow.
big dude?
Well, the starting quarterback for Seattle, we all know, is Sam Darnold. But guess what? Sam Darnold is the first USC quarterback to start in a Super Bowl. Not Matt Leinart, not Rodney
Wait,
Peete,
what?
not Matt Barkley, not Caleb or Rob Johnson, or even Todd Marinovich. It is Sam Darnold is the first USC quarterback to start in the Super Bowl.
That's crazy. That's crazy. What you got, G?
Well, this is really more about the folk that did not make the Super Bowl. It's the Pro Bowl. I happened to come across the highlights of the Pro Bowl, and I was like, "What?" Because one, it was flag football and what appeared to be like a practice facility. It was yeah. It was like a real one of those real tight practice facilities. You know what I'm talking
Wait,
about?
what?
And so I was like,
What?
what? There's hardly anybody there. It's flag football. It's this practice facility. So I'm like, how much lower can the Pro Bowl fall?
Man. Well,
That's
and they
crazy.
used to get prizes for who won and who lost. There was a prize even back to the 70s, and it was real football. I
Hmm.
remember.
Yeah, I
And
almost
Flag
turned it
now.
on too. I almost turned it on, but I'm like, yeah, there's a better
can't
use of
do
my
it.
time.
No.
God
It's
bless you. How
not.
long
It's
did you
not
stick
worth
in
it
there?
for me. After seeing that, I said one of the first thoughts came to my mind was the Pro Bowl and the Hall of Fame. Something needs to change.
Mm. How long did you stick with it, G?
I just watched the highlights, maybe all of 60 seconds, and I was out.
Did
I
Shadura
just
do
couldn't
anything?
stomach it.
Shadura do anything while you were watching, just out of curiosity?
Um, no, I didn't really see his highlights. Not in this particular clip. But I remember growing up. A '70s baby. 80s baby, and you look forward to the Pro Bowl because they
Absolutely.
played.
Mhm.
But this is as bad as the NBA, man.
Yeah,
Mm,
sounds
mm,
like
mm.
it. Sounds like it. Man, tragedy. Yeah, I used to look forward to watching the Pro Bowl, but it is what it is.
What's going on?
Mm,
So,
mm,
what's
mm.
going on in the world of sports other than the Super Bowl, obviously, which we'll spend most of our time on today? So, we had another coaching hire today. Frank Wright was hired as the offensive coordinator for the Jets. A little bit surprised that his name wasn't tossed around for some of the other jobs, especially the Eagles job. But real quick, big dude, do you think this is a good move for the Jets?
I think it's an excellent move because um, they need all the help that they can get. They're used to having new quarterbacks. They put the quarterbacks out there. It's almost like they're like wind up toys. They're trying to see if they work. So you need someone who has the pedigree that Frank Reich has, and this is a guy that was a OC, of course, in the Super Bowl with the Eagles, working in an organization where a lot of people were hovering over him, and that's the way the Jets is. I think he's the right type of person overall for that type of job, and can coach all those other people, not just know the plays, but Frank Reich I think can provide them with the authentic coaching that's needed. And Aaron Glenn, if he doesn't have a strong right hand, I think this is his first chance to have a strong right hand in this particular situation he's in. He needs the help. He is on the clock himself, Aaron Glenn. So I think this was a perfect pick for the Jets, and an unfortunate one that the Eagles, I'm not sure if they called him, but I don't see how we let him get to the Jets. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
And what about you, G?
My initial reaction was I didn't think it was a good pick. I thought his successes were far were several years away. I think that this is another example of failing up. In his particular role, I thought there were some better options that are out there. I'm like, I mean, Atlanta, no, they didn't make the playoffs, but I thought Raheem had them going. I mean, he had some bad luck, I thought, with some plays and some injuries. And I think that in today's NFL, it would have been good to snap him up.
Mm-hmm.
The Ravens QB coach, I thought he was pretty good. Ronald Curry, y'all quarterback coach, I thought he was pretty good. So I thought that it depends. So my initial reaction was no. Then it kind of moved on. Well, it depends on what your approach is. Like Big Dude say, if it's really about stability, he's been there. He's done that. Minimally, he'll know how to pull a team together. That would be my mind. But if you're about okay, not just being safe, not just having someone who has an experience building, but you want somebody who is going to think about the team differently, then you bring in some young blood and you let them run with it. So it seems like the Jets are taking the safe route. Let's try to pull this thing together versus bringing somebody younger and newer or a current coach in the league, head coach in the league like Raheem, and having them trying to deal with it. So, me personally, if I were a Jet, I wouldn't be too excited about it, but I understand it.
What's going on?
In the NBA, blockbuster trade, James Harden moves on from the Clippers and headed to Cleveland. What do you guys think about that? Does this put Cleveland over the top? And keep in mind, Cleveland was the number one seed in the East last year, best record in the East, and they lost in the quarterfinal round. Very disappointing for them. So they were close. Does this put Cleveland over the top now in the East? G.
I think it depends on how Harden decides to play. If he come in and play ball hog, I think he's going to just disrupt the team. But if he actually decides to kind of take a step back and mesh with the team while still playing to his strengths, then I think it can probably be pretty helpful. But I just don't trust him. I just think he's a team destroyer.
Interesting.
At
What
least
about
lately. At
you?
least lately. Post Houston.
What about you, big dude?
I don't think it necessarily does. It gives them a chance to. The thing with James Harden, if you look at what he's done in the past for different teams, he's been traded from Houston and from Philadelphia and from the Nets, and he always gets people toward the playoffs or near the playoffs and has a chance. Like, man, that game 7 with the Sixers, there's no way in the world the Sixers, I don't think, shouldn't have gone to the finals with James Harden at the point, him having these historical playoff games. His game 7s just aren't that great. And I think what G's saying is, and I question about what's going on with this trade, his little bit of tampering that it appears that he may have done. And some of the comments that I saw that he made had to do with whether he thought that he needed to go because he didn't want to block the Clippers' developmental plan or their plan to tear things apart and start over. See, when you start talking like that, it's about something else. And now, if James Harden could be about everyone else, he just can't take that whole thing off of himself. Now, with Cleveland, if you look at Cleveland, and I think it's Garland he's being traded, traded for. Garland, Harden is 36 on one side, Garland is 26 with other players that they have on the other side. Both are hungry for a championship. And James Harden says he's never won in the NBA and wants to win it. But there just seems to be too many precursors. And there's nothing wrong with him making that move, but he's not even admitting that he's done that. But every team he's left from, that's the first. I'm glad he said that he wanted to win a championship, because every other team he has left from, that has not been the forefront of it. It has been something that as a part of a bad contract. Now I'm understanding that $13 million out of a $42 million option that's guaranteed that he's looking at. Now that means obviously out of $42 million, you want to be guaranteed more than that. So I'm not so sure. I think it should put them over the top. I think a lot of it's going to have to do is he willing to sacrifice himself at this particular stage, or is he going to kind of cut through the wrong type of fat? He needs to put the fat aside and get other people not just involved, but be able to take over a game. I think if he was still able to take over a game and it was 4 years ago, you'd be looking at him going over the top. Right now, his biggest thing will be to fit in. So I don't think we're at that point where they can go over the top. On paper, yes. In reality, I don't believe so.
All right. In other NBA trade news, we have Anthony Davis going from Dallas to Washington in an 8-player deal. NBA super active today. Cleveland traded Alonzo Ball and 2 second-round picks to the Utah Jazz. Finally, Chris Paul. There's been a Chris Paul sighting, everyone. We forgot about Chris Paul after the Clippers banished him. Cliff Paul is headed to Toronto on a 3-team deal with between the Clippers and Brooklyn. Philadelphia is making a move, trading Jared McCain to OKC, getting a title shot for that young man, in a 3-team deal with the Houston Rockets. And Chicago traded guard Kobe White. Some of you guys may remember Kobe White from the UNC days, from those last teams that made deep runs in the tournament, and veteran Mike Conley to the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for a couple of players and 3 second-round picks. So switching gears from the NBA into the world of skiing, Lindsey Vonn plans to compete in the upcoming Winter Olympics despite rupturing her ACL about 5 days ago in a skiing event. She says she's good to go. She did an interview today with the media. She looks like she's gotten a reprieve here in terms of one of the Olympic practices being delayed. So she thinks she's going to be ready to go for the Winter Olympics starting in a few days. In college hoops news, UConn women and Arizona men keep it rolling. UConn women are 23-0. Arizona men are 22-0, both number 1 in the country. And speaking of Arizona, Bryce James, who we know who Bryce James is, the youngest son of the king, LeBron James, is redshirting at Arizona. So that's a good move for that young man. I do want to get your comments on this last news tidbit, especially you, G. You're familiar with this young man. In the college football world, Joey Aguilar has gotten a temporary restraining order in his bid for an extra year of eligibility. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Joey Aguilar is the Tennessee quarterback who transferred from Appalachian State. And he's looking for an extra year on the premise that he had 1 year at a junior college, which he thinks should not count against his eligibility. Gee, you know Mr. Aguilar a little bit more intimately in following him prior to transferring to Tennessee. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm always been a fan that eligibility is eligibility, whether or not you start at a 2-year college or not. I just look at it all as college football. I haven't gone into the NCAA's actual rule book on this particular one. So the only thing I would say is at Appalachian State, I didn't think he was the greatest. There were a lot of times when he showed flashes. And when he got to Tennessee, I think he had some better quarterback coaching. And I think he definitely played much better at Tennessee than he did at Appalachian State. So we all saw the flashes there. There's a part of me, I hope the young man can make a case to get an extra year eligibility. I think he needs it. Because if he continues the trajectory that he is on, we might see him, playing on Sundays. But I definitely think he needs another year. So I'm pulling for the young man. I hope he gets it.
All right. What about you, big dude?
I know something about it. The unfortunate part about JUCO ball. I mean, JUCO balls, obviously not as organized and they don't have as many resources, but it counts. Unless there was now it was 1 year, I guess. Now I'm not so sure how you could justify it not being 1 year. I guess the difficult part is when you start looking at eligibility, G, and I don't know what you think. And I think I saw, and I can't remember who the athletes were. I think there was somebody, I think the guru from Alabama in basketball, where someone actually went to the G League and was able to come back and play college basketball. And I think that if you can go to the G League and go back and play college basketball, G League is supposed to be a two-way contract, with the NBA. How could you not extend it? It just seems like there's so many different things on when we start talking about what compliance is. Anything that where you leave college and come back, and this is a person trying to stay. I like his, although I think the JUCO counts. I think you start to take a look at, if you're talking about 5 years maximum, unless there was some other reason. I don't know how much playing time he got at the JUCO, but I would say it would have to be left open if you could do things like that in other sports for compliance and to come back. And I think the one player from Alabama is coming back in the middle, or in the SEC is coming back in the middle of the season also. So I think when you start jumbling things like that, and we've been through these court cases, I would look at be in favor of keeping them. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that you can keep him out of it because of the way other sports handles things and brings people back from these quasi-professional leagues.
Okay, jump back. You can jump back in, G, if you have some more words on this.
Yeah, I just looked it up, and it seems like federal courts were suggesting that JUCO should not be considered as a part of eligibility because they're two different entities. So I guess they're not a part of NCAA per se. So if that's the case, then if you have 4 years of eligibility for NCAA, then that is what it is. You weren't there. It's kind of like the person that you saying, big dude, you can't be NCAA, then become a professional and come back. But what happens if you were a professional first? It doesn't really say. So I just thought I'll throw that out there since I just looked it up. So JUCO, according to federal courts, are different than the NCAA. So I think he should get his eligibility.
Yeah, I wanted to wrap up with that. That apparently the distinction has been made, precedence has been set in terms of JUCO not counting. So it seems like Aguilar really has a good case here based on what's been happening in previous suits. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I agree with you, G. Not impressed with him. I'm sure it's a final reach to see if he can go somewhere and hit and maybe improve his draft stock if he has any draft stock. I'm sure that's totally what this is about, but I don't see him really progressing any further if he does get the extra year, but best of luck to him.
Yeah, the only last thing I was going to say about Aguilar, and I really think that most agents should consider this, is that if their athlete isn't ready but actually has some decent skill, they should be looking at Canada. They should go up to Canada. They can still develop, blow up in Canada. NFL will definitely come knocking.
Totally agree. Don't know why more guys don't consider that, but hey. Moving on to Super Bowl 60, which will be the emphasis of all of our shows for the next few days, obviously leading up to Super Bowl Sunday. Today was Radio Media Day, where the players and coaches were hitting Radio Row, which I did not know was a thing. I didn't know I had an official title until I heard about it today, to provide us with some sound bites leading up to the game. Right now, we're at 4 days remaining until the big game, and teams will begin to lock in even more on what game day prep looks like. We're certainly going to get into more depth in terms of our analysis, as we did during the playoffs, breaking each team down, breaking down the advantages, disadvantages, and certainly ending with our predictions for who we think will win the game. But before we get into that over the next couple of days, these teams are in their late week preparation at this point. I mean, basically this day is gone. It's Thursday, and you really start to get into mode, I would think, by Thursday, especially going into a game this big. So that pressure is going to start to mount. I'm starting to feel the pressure as a fan, and I have nothing to lose or gain by whatever the outcome is. So I know that these guys are feeling the pressure. Big dude, who do you think is carrying the most weight going into this game? Who is under the most pressure?
Well, I mean, I guess starting with the coaches, there's a lot expected, and the coaches are, starting with Seattle. I mean, Seattle, went through this year, a tremendous year, dominant playoffs, and what we've seen in the past is sometimes that's all for naught. So I would say it's the coaches, the quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, of course, has come from different teams. The last 2 years, his regular season record was 30-7, and it was almost done. It was almost a bust. So now he's going from a bust probably to now a person that gets to be a football hero, so to speak. So there's a lot on him, and he came and he came. I mean, last year he was a lame duck quarterback from Minnesota, and just so until McCarthy came back, he's 14-3, and that's still not good enough. So he has a whole lot going on. So I'll say it's the quarterbacks, and I'll say the edge rushers and the offensive tackles. With the pressure on the quarterback, both quarterbacks, good quarterbacks. May is a more mobile quarterback. Seattle can't afford to have pressure from New England's edge and vice versa. So that's what I'm going to say. The game's played in the edge. I know the wideouts and all those folks will have it, but in order for the wideouts to have the game, they're going to have the edge rushers and the linemen blocking. Also, of course, running backs. Kenneth Walker III, I think, will have pressure on him, but he will be taking the pressure off of everyone else with the run game, and it'll be the same way with New England. So I think in that order.
All right, G, where do you stand on this? Who do you think is really starting to feel that pressure right now?
Well, I looked at it like with Seattle being the betting favorite. So I really think that they are really under the most pressure because everyone is basically saying you should win. And so they're probably under that pressure to perform. Darnold, he really has to continue to play well on his redemption season versus he can't revert to the Sam Darnold of before. I'm believing that because I know Seattle had quite a few injuries as compared to New England. So I'm really thinking that the second string, the next player up, they're really going to have a lot of pressure on them, to step in and play Super Bowl caliber football. So for me, with Seattle having the better offense, they were ranked 6 versus New England 11, but New England had the better defense in the playoffs. I'm talking about playoff stats, with New England being number 1 versus Seattle being number 7. So I do believe that Seattle in total probably have the stats in their favor. But what does that do for New England? To me, I'm on New England's side. I'm saying, look, we're not expected to win. We're going to open up the playbook. We're gonna go out there. We're gonna have fun on offense. Coaches are gonna put you in the best chance to win. We're gonna lean on defense. I may even ramp up, different types of blitzes or even more, increase the number of disguised blitzes. Let those guys fly around would kind of be my thinking. The weather should be pretty good here. So they play pretty well, up in Foxborough. They should really be loose here in California. So for me, I think New England, they have an opportunity to just go out, have fun, and prove people wrong. But Seattle they really have the pressure on them. They are the bet to win.
Yeah, and you mentioned Seattle being a favorite. That spread has not moved, which is interesting. as we're about to end the day on Wednesday. I thought for sure that spread would move one way or another, but it's still at Seattle favored by 4.5. So we'll see if it takes that move, which usually you'll see any movement if there's none before now, at least towards the end of the week here. I've even seen, I think the Buffalo-Denver game changed the night before even to Denver being a favorite. So we'll see what happens. But
what's the over-under?
The over-under is 45.5.
Oh, so they're thinking 20 to 25 game.
Yeah.
I still think 30
Yep.
is going to be the winner. If you don't get above 30, I think you lose.
Yeah. On my end, I have one singular individual as having the weight of the world on his shoulders, and that's Sam Darnold. I agree with both of you in terms of New England's pretty much playing with house money. If they don't win, no one's going to be super critical. Oh, they only won 4 games last year. Isn't it just a great story that they made it back and won the division, and it's a young team on the rise? Seattle is here. Sam Darnold, we all know his story, and he's now at his moment of truth, and I feel like everything is on him. I truly believe this entire game is on him. If we see the Sam Darnold that we've been seeing, and Big Dude and I were talking earlier today, I didn't realize that Joker's 70% passing for the year. That's amazing. 70%. That's a hell of a completion rate.
Yes, it is.
Keep that throughout the year, right?
Yes.
So
wow.
I think that Samuel is going to start to feel some pressure especially when he wakes up Saturday morning. That's going to be Sunday morning, excuse me. That's going to probably be the longest Sunday of his life. So I see he's got to play a clean game. He's got to do what he was born to do. And, we'll get into the details of what he needs to do as we continue on in our week and our coverage. But I have it purely on Sam Darnold. If I had to go with 2 or 3, I'd actually put Drake May next. I think that the way the media narrative has gone, there's a lot of expectations of him now. People are already trying to say, is he the next great New England quarterback? Is he the great league quarterback? So I think the next bit of pressure is on him. Outside of that, it's on Seattle. I think if I had to pick a 3, I'd agree with you, G. It's on that Seattle team. They've been great all year. So I think the expectation is that they're going to play like they've been playing all year, and we'll see if New England can match that. So good discussion on that there, fellas. What's one thing that, G, you think could happen in this game that would make you sit back and say, damn, I totally did not see that coming?
I would say if Drake May throws for 300 yards and several touchdowns, that would surprise me.
What about you, Big Dude? I'm sorry. Go ahead, G. You got more to add to that?
I think they have I think he has the capability to do it. I mean, you don't make it to the Super Bowl with not having the capability. Whether or not they can dial that up is another question.
What about you, Big Dude?
I would say New England being able to unlock that Seattle defense with an aggressive offense, that one that is not, I say in the beginning, New England taking a lead. If we're looking at New England taking maybe a 14-0 lead, getting out early, shocking them early with some explosive plays, that would kind of shake me up a little bit, because I really see Seattle being in total control of this particular game for the most part. But I would say if New England is able to score on some explosive plays that Seattle hasn't given up all year. Seattle's a number 1 defense. There are a number of things that they tend not to give up. If Drake May is especially successful in being involved with explosive plays, that would kind of turn my head around a little bit, because getting out in front is what New England needs to do. The explosive plays and a 2-score lead would be it for me. That would spin my head around.
Hmm.
For me, I think I agree with both of you. I think we're all on the same page here. I would be a little bit surprised if Seattle's defense didn't do what it does. Like I would be totally shocked if New England had their way offensively, especially uh, if you think about the trouble that they had with the Houston defense. That game certainly could have gone very differently had CJ Stroud just been 50% of himself.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
New England's offense against the better defenses, which they haven't played a lot of them. Their schedule has not been the most difficult, not holding that against them, but they have not seen these type of defenses. And if anything, if this goes anything like that Houston game went, this should be problematic for Drake May. And that kind of leads me, I guess, to another question. Whose defense do you think was? Do you think that the Houston defense was the bigger challenge for the Patriots, or do you think Seattle will be? Because I haven't looked, I don't remember what the defensive rankings were, but I know that I was really riding Houston tough. I thought they were the best defense in football, even though Denver was the number one ranked defense. The Seattle defense has to be up there. Do you think that they're going to present more challenges to the Patriots than Houston? Because I think that'll be our telltale story at the end of the day. So, New England's seen this before, I guess you could say. I would say I probably give the edge to Houston being better on the backside of their defense. I think Seattle's defense might be a little bit better up front. I shouldn't say better. Their strength is up front. I think their DBs can certainly be had, but an all-pro DB is made from an all-pro D line, right? And I know, big dude, you appreciate the love for the line whenever there's love for the lineman. But, we all know that if you have a good defensive line, I can be an all-pro DB because you don't have to cover that long, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the Seattle defense is going to present a bigger challenge, or did Houston present New England's biggest challenge? Yeah, I'll start with you, big dude. Sorry.
Okay. Uh, to be honest with you, as good as Houston was, and of course, their head coach, just tremendous head coach with I'm sure, with the defensive background, being a linebacker, I would have to give it to Seattle based on the help that they have. I would say that, especially Leslie Frazier, whose name has not come up, who as a DB by trade and a DB coach by trade, I think we'll have the DBs more ready and more prepared on that defense. And he also, if you look at a lot of his other things before, when they ask him what was it the DBs or was it the D line, especially on some of the outstanding teams he said that with the pass rush and all, it makes the DB's job a lot easier. So I think that having him there, not just from the standpoint of a scheme, but having people ready to go, looking at tendencies. And I would tend to say that Houston's defense is probably more physical. Those guys will knock you out of the game in a second. But if we look beyond just who has the killer shots is going to put people beyond the game, I think Seattle will be able to hold their own in terms of people doing their jobs, working together, and getting to the quarterback without blitzing. Houston has some outstanding blitz. I don't think that Seattle has the blitz as much as Houston did to get to the quarterback. I would say, and Leslie Frazier, I would say Seattle.
All right. What about you, G?
I was looking at the stats so far, and they're pretty similar in terms of points allowed. 16 and a half for Seattle, 17 um, for for Houston, at least in the postseason. So if you follow this, Seattle should give New England the tougher time. But I'm also thinking about it. Y'all can tell me what you think in terms of the teams in the NFC versus the AFC. Arguably, I would say the NFC was a rougher road, and they scored more, and the teams put up I think a lot more yards if I look at the stats correctly. So that's why I just focus on the points allowed from a defensive perspective, regardless. 16 versus 17. So I think they're almost comparable in a lot of ways. But Seattle with a slight edge.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that analysis. G, the NFC playoffs, as far as I'm concerned, were a juggernaut compared to what happened in the AFC. I think the better teams were in the NFC for sure. G, what do you think in terms of, let's say both these QBs have an average game? They have average games. Which team would win their game, in your opinion, if it was just pedestrian days by both?
Whew. Oh, that's a good question. If they had just pedestrian days, part of me still thinks that Seattle will win because I think they have a better tight end and wide receiver tandem. So if average numbers going to those skilled players, I think Seattle still pulls it out.
You a big dude?
I would definitely agree with G, especially looking at again, without explosive plays. If you want to make sure that how it is they control the game with their offensive line very strong, and also their running back, who was very steady, protects the football. Their offense protects the football good. And it's not that New England doesn't. When I say I don't know if that's going to be much of a problem, because even if New England has a pedestrian game, and we know that Drake May, I think, was a 10 for 23 last game. If you look overall and look at his numbers, he had a pedestrian game, but was able to make some of those other plays that he made. I'm not so sure that they could put in a naked bootleg to beat Seattle. I think Seattle's much more disciplined on the edge. I think Seattle is much more disciplined across the board. They had a problem with their one DB. Hope they get him together, number 27. And I would say that, in a pedestrian game, Seattle is a little bit more fit. And then what we haven't mentioned is much, and I say maybe he's not the number one or even top 5 receiver anymore. I think the other X factor in that is Cooper Kupp. I would say during a pedestrian game, he would cause the most damage. Not with a lot of yards, but making sure he had the key catches.
Yeah, and I think what's being lost a little bit here is those Rams Seattle games in terms of how much damage the Rams offense did against Seattle. First of all, you're dealing with divisional opponents, and you know how divisional games are. It doesn't matter if a team could be 0-10 going into week 11 playing a 10-0 team, and the game's probably going to be tight just because that's what the division matchups are, right?
Right.
So, they're familiar with each other. They play each other 2 times a year, so there's that familiarity, I think, helps with game planning. Additionally, the offense that the Rams have is probably unmatched in the league when you think about the outside specifically. The receivers that they have. I mean, they have potentially 2 Hall of Famers. I think Devontae Adams has done enough already. Puka's certainly going to be there. And they have 2 really good tight ends, right? Before you even get to they have a 2-headed beast at running back. So the Rams offense presents much more than I think the Patriots offense does, because if we think about the Patriots offense, is there anybody on that offense that scares you to death?
No, not really.
Can't think of anybody. And if I got to go to Diggs, which, I love Diggs, I hate the way things ended in Buffalo, but if that's the scariest person on your offense, that's problematic in my opinion. That is very problematic. If you're talking about, well, we can put up the same points and move the ball like the Rams did. You don't have what the Rams have. Plus, not to diminish Drake May's season and what he's accomplished already, compare him to Matthew Stafford. There's no comparison.
Sorry.
You got it.
Oh, I was just going to say, from what we had, we didn't talk about the game extensively, but I remember one of the biggest things to look at, you're not going to have a player, like Matthew Stafford. I mean, 374 yards and 3 TDs against that defense. The whole team for the Rams is built to do that to just about anybody, and that's what made that game so difficult, because he kept going. And, we talk about coaching decisions and other things that could have won the game, but the Rams had every chance to win. And I think the Rams might be the only offense that was built to challenge Seattle all the way to the end. I didn't see anyone else. So if there's anybody else in the AFC, I'm sure they played. I'm sure they played a hard season. I'm sure they scrapped hard, but nothing like that where 78% of the offense came from Matthew Stafford. That was put them in a position to win. I just don't see that with Drake May just yet. Making plays sharp, very tough. Nobody questions his toughness. But in a pedestrian game, I think that Seattle makes out better.
And the Rams were the number 1 ranked offense, too. Don't get that, for the number 1 scoring offense. So I think that's a big stat there. If we look at the coaching in this game, 2 really good coaches. The big distinction is one being a newer head coach, and Vrabel having been around the league as a head coach before, and certainly as an assistant, and then as a player comes from championship pedigree. Who do you think has the coaching advantage here? Because I don't know if we could necessarily assume based on experience that someone has that advantage, but I do want to throw that out there to see what you guys think and how you look at these 2 coaches.
My initial reaction was I think Vrabel did a whole lot with this team. I think to get New England to this point required rock solid, coaching and having a good coaching staff together and just coming up with good plays, making adjustments when necessary. So part of me is leaning toward Vrabel having that just from a pure coaching perspective. I don't necessarily mean that they will outcoach Seattle, because I think Seattle also has the players to make the coaching work, but just the ability to get the most out of their players and be most consistent. Maybe I think Vrabel is probably the better coach.
And what about you, big dude?
Well, in looking at all the other things that both teams went through going through the playoffs, one of the things with McDonald, I think is a good coach, and I think might be a little bit better, because when we talk about the CEO type of thing for McDonald, he has the coordinators and the assistant head coach that everybody, I'm sure, wish they had. I know that Leslie Frazier is the assistant head coach, but as soon as he got hired, he knew he needed somebody like Frazier, and of course has Kubiak, who's not going to be there anymore. This is going to be, looks like Kubiak's last game. So you have to be able to use your resources, get the most out of your players, but try not to do it all by yourself. You can kind of see in Seattle, there's a system. I think there's a feeling in Seattle that, all over there is accountability. And, especially when the game is on the line, that you still are letting people who are below you make the choice that you need to make to win the ball game. And I think that's what it was. I think what makes both coaches unique, and I will say the same thing with Vrabel in some ways, that, the game started off a little strange with them. The other week, Christian Gonzalez gets beat, for a long, not touchdown, but long explosive play. And neither coach panics when people make big plays on them or explosives. I think what makes Seattle a little bit better is, I think across the board, the depth in coaching and him being able to, that's a McDonald, being able to orchestrate the depth in coaching to get the most out of what goes on, and depending upon what kind of game it is, whether it is a pedestrian game that you spoke of, Guru, or almost a shootout and a knockdown, drag them out as Seattle had with the Rams. I think it was the coaching and the non-panic all around doing a game like that there's no way that McDonald did that by himself, nor I don't think that he tried to do it by himself. So I would say what he orchestrates with his coaching staff, using his experience and knowing where everyone else has to go, and to also reel in a player who is in a bad way. When you have a player that's in a bad way, a lot of people lose a football game like that with a careless personal foul. But that was a game where I would say during the game I almost forgot about that, because whatever they had to do and whatever energy it was, they pushed it aside to win the game. They weren't on the right side of things with statistics. It was Matt Stafford, but it wasn't enough because Seattle was pretty deep with the way they were running things. And I would say that's what makes McDonald a little bit better. In this, I would say in the matchup, I would say Vrabel right now has got a better handle on individual things as a coach, but I think McDonald is a better orchestrator than Vrabel.
Interesting. Believe it or not, I'm going to say that McDonald has the advantage here, just because I think that he has the matchups in pretty much every aspect of this game. And he's one of those bright young minds that I think that will basically trump his lack of experience. I think situationally, some things that may arise during the course of the game, especially any adversity that may happen, might be where Vrabel has some advantages at times. But if you look at some of the games that these two teams have played, Seattle's been in a lot of close games. New England, not so much until the playoffs. And even then, how close were their playoff games? Houston, they didn't necessarily pull away from Houston, but I think we were all texting back and forth and pretty much thought this game is over well before it was actually over. Denver made it look good for a little bit, but it was so bad with the Chargers, I forgot they played the Chargers first. So New England really didn't have much resistance in their first three games of the playoff. And if you go back to the regular season, it's public knowledge that New England had a very weak schedule, so they weren't tested in very many games. So I think that that's something that could come back to bite them when we look at situations that get tight. And that's a great transition into the last question I have for you both. If the game is close late, who has the edge and why? We just talked about the coaches, and we've talked about the matchups and things that need to happen throughout the game, and where we saw both of these teams. If this game is tight late, who has the edge here, and why do they have that edge?
Well, if I go with the stats, I would say Seattle will have the eggs. I'll take that back. New England may have the edge on running if it's just really, 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 really close. And because I also believe that they will use May's legs enough to do one or two things just to keep New England honest, but also to actually just create plays. So I think if it's close, it is conceivable that that May having the ability to run could become an X factor if it's close. But also, if it's close and it's a shootout, so the first one is if it's close because of defense. If it's close but it's a shootout, which means that Darnold, his injury isn't bothering him, I think he's going to just march downfield. I think they just march downfield and close it out.
Big dude, how do you think a late close game unfolds, and who would have the advantage and why?
I think in a late close game, I'm going to go with the edge, and I'm going to look at the edge rushers on. I think Seattle putting pressure, not just on May, because May can get away, but I like Seattle in the way they play their discipline, on defense. Again, May is solid with his legs. I'm not sure that he has enough accuracy to make the throw that he needs to make. He can make the run, and that's my distinction. I think he can make the run in some of these other broken plays that he can make more. He almost in almost like a Jim Thorpe type of way, like in a very quiet way with that too. But I think when you start talking about accuracy, making a throw that you need to make, and also the defense being disciplined, which is I know that obviously New England is, but I think through all those things on both sides, I think Seattle would make one more play than New England.
Yeah, based on what I've seen all year, I got to a point that I started trusting Seattle late in those games. And I hark back to that Thursday night game against the Rams. I'm watching that entire game really up until late in the fourth quarter, and I'm thinking the Rams are going to win this game. They're going to find a way to win this game. But Seattle found a way, and that last time that Seattle found a way to win, that's when I became a believer, because I'm thinking there's no way that they're going to make a play to win this game. And, when they played them in the NFC Championship, you could see that confidence that Seattle had late, because it looked like the Rams were going to snatch the game from them again. And, whether we can point to McVay's call on fourth down, not taking the field goal, having all 3 timeouts, and maybe playing it safe and depending on your defense to get the ball back for you as the reason they lost or not. I think that Seattle did what they needed to do both on the defensive side of the ball, and when they got the ball back, Darnold pretty much ran out the clock. I mean, that was a defining moment for him. So very interesting. In thinking about the show today, I was all over the place. I still don't know who I'm picking yet. I know who I want to pick because I'm a New England hater. I'm sorry for all my Boston friends, but I don't know that I'm going to go against them. So we shall see. Any parting words? We will certainly get into a more detailed analysis, as you've seen us do throughout the playoffs in the last few weeks of the regular season. G got us on a good start today looking at some of the rankings, but we are really going to delve into this and look at these matchups for the remaining episodes leading up to the Super Bowl. Any last words before we move on? Big Dude, I'll start with you to close us out with your final comments.
I think my final comment, again, has to do when we start talking about intangibles and where the edges are. I continue to bring up, it was hard to not include Leslie Frazier in that particular formula, looking at all the different things that Leslie Frazier has done all the way back with him being in the Super Bowl in the Bears, 1985, the Bears team, with Fridge and all those people, his career ending in that particular Super Bowl, and then him going to the Super Bowl and winning with Tony Dungy. And he has a chance to win a second Super Bowl. And he's been a head coach. He didn't have a great record as a head coach, 18-29-1. But beyond all those other things, he is 66 years old. He is helping someone get to the Super Bowl with all of his experience and all his knowledge and his organization. He's very humble, and they basically are riding his back for the things that are happening with Seattle systematically. And at 66 years old, will he get another chance? And will this be his last year? I was very disappointed to understand, as I looked at this entire coaching carousel, that it doesn't appear that he got a call. And people can say 66 years old is too old. But again, he is there to fix and put things upright. He is a champion, and he should not be playing for second place. And I don't think I understand him because he is 66 and African-American, and I'm 60 years old and African-American male as well. I believe I understand him because not just that he's a champion, I understand him because I believe he's who I am in a lot of ways. So I would say, looking into this game, don't put Leslie Frazier's, not just his accomplishment, but his effect on the game from the past and future. Will he be in a winner's circle to confirm his legacy in the winner's circle overall?
And that's a really great point. Big dude. Leslie Frazier's name was brought up in the media this past week about how instrumental he's been to the success of the Seattle defense. And I know when he was in Buffalo, the success our defense had, there's controversy over the 13-second game because that information is coming out now that Leslie Frazier wanted to go with a different defense and McDermott overrode him. And here we are with no Super Bowl appearances or rings. So, your thoughts, your final comments.
Oh, man. Turnovers. In the playoffs so far, Seattle is +4, New England is +3. So keep an eye on the turnovers.
You know that between the three of us, we speak that gospel every single time, and I'm sure it's going to come up multiple times as we get to Sunday. Believe you me, turnovers in any sport is going to impact you. So thanks again, fellas. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of Chasing Rings. Please be sure to continue to subscribe, or if you have not, please subscribe. Continue to follow us if you have. If you have not, please click on those plus signs and check us out. Again, thank you, and we will see you on the next episode. See you later.